Welcome to the Futurist Society podcast, where we delve into the latest advancements in technology, science, and culture. From discussions on the latest breakthroughs in AI, biotechnology, and space exploration, the Futurist Society is your window into all of the awesomeness that the future holds. Get ready to be informed and inspired as we consider the positive impact of emerging technologies on humanity. Without further ado, welcome your host, Dr. Awesome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Futurist Society, where we are talking in the present, but talking about the future. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Awesome. And today we have Andi Mann, who is a thought leader and a CTO. I was really excited to speak with Andi about the future of work and everything that he's doing. So Andi, tell us a little bit about yourself so that we can know what it is that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, Dr. Awesome, thank you so much for having me. So you can tell by my accent that I'm originally from Australia. I'm a global guy. I've been around the world. I've worked in 5 different continents. My entire life has been around information technology. And yeah, the whole future of work is really interesting to me because I've sort of lived the dream to a large degree. And there's been lots of triggers. But through my life in UK, in Australia, here in the US now, I've been remote and working with remote teams as an individual contributor, as a manager, as an executive, and now as a consultant and advisor. So I'm really interested in this topic to see where it goes.
Yeah, so I just started getting into just the whole idea of a chief information officer or a chief technical officer. So I'm an entrepreneur. I employ about 200 people, and we're at that point where we're like debating, is this somebody that we bring on? Can you tell our audience just kind of what your job entails and why, even for a small business, it might be interesting, especially considering all of the new technology that's coming, why they might be interested in hiring a CTO or a chief information officer?
Yeah, look, technology is everything for most organizations these days. You run so much of your business and your life and your people with technology. So anything from managing your smartphones and managing privacy and security about the data that's getting transmitted there, the applications that you're using to communicate maybe with others in the world, run your business, doing your accounting, even as simple as that. There's lots of choices to be made, and there's lots of bodies of knowledge which tell you how to make those choices if you've got sort of your 10,000 hours in, if you've got that experience as a technology leader. And that's what I've been in my career and still am, understanding what's coming, what's happening now. How do I plan for future technology while still implementing something that's going to be working for me today to make my business better, make my people's lives easier, reduce the amount of toil and thrash that our workers do and our people do by providing more assistance by computer systems to do that work for them, to free up creativity, innovation, imagination. So the role of a CTO or a CIO is very much to look at the opportunities in technology, implement the things that are going to work now for Horizon 1, also Horizon 2 into the future. But by making sure that you've got the best technology in place, your CTO or your CIO will be able to help your people be more efficient, more effective, and set you up for the future.
Yeah, so I always wondered about this. One of the first guests I had on this podcast was a professor of business at Carnegie Mellon, and he was unsure if this was going to be democratization of technology, so that, if I had a food truck or something like that, rather than have a CIO or something like that, if I had the ability to have some, technology that leveraged my food truck so that I could be more productive or that I could reach more people. He wasn't sure if it was going to be democratized like that, where everybody would just have more advantages in getting their business out there, or if it was going to be kind of in the hands of the few people that could afford this kind of technology, a large company that's able to have someone like yourself on staff. How do you feel that the future is going to look like?
Yeah, look, I actually do buy into the idea of this democratization of technology. I'll give you some examples. So you talk about a food truck, great example, right? A small business, maybe employs 3 or 4 people, a couple of cooks every now and then. Maybe it's even smaller. But nowadays, when you go out to food truck parks and so forth, half the time you're swiping with your phone, you're using Stripe or using Square. Maybe you're using newer apps like Toast. These are areas where if I'm a food truck operator, and I'm by the way, I love food and I love food trucks. But if you're a food truck operator, you're probably a really good cook, a chef. That's where your specialty is. That's where you're going to make money. You're going to delight your customers by creating these amazing food products. What you're maybe not so good at is billing and accounting and taking those orders. So if you can just literally outsource that to this third-party technology, if you know that technology exists, then you can focus on your core competency. You can do what makes you really good, what makes your customers super happy to work with you. The challenge is, how do you find out about that technology? I don't think a food truck needs a CTO, but I do need a technology advisor of some kind to help them understand what's the difference between using a toast or using a stripe or a square. Which one is better for your business? Which one's going to set you up in the future? I absolutely believe this democratization will happen. And don't get me wrong, was it William S. Gibson, I think, said the future is here, but it's not evenly distributed. That's absolutely true. It's not all individual operators will be able to get this technology. And a lot of work happens in person, so you can't necessarily do it remotely with technology like a lot of people are doing. But I do think that the technology that helps people drive their business forward, service their customers better, get the best out of their team, I think that's pretty democratizable.
Yeah. So let's go to like a slightly larger business, like maybe somebody like mine where, we have about 200 people, maybe 500 people. I bring somebody in like you. Are you building that technology yourself, or is it mainly working with vendors? Like, what does that look like for maybe a small to medium-sized business?
Yeah, for a mid-sized business, you're probably going to get a sort of VP technology kind of level person, someone who's senior, has a lot of knowledge. They're not necessarily going to be your C-staff in that same way that maybe your CFO, your chief financial officer is, for example. But you're going to get someone who can help you across the whole business. So you're going to need a polyglot, someone who knows about the end user technology. So if you're selling things to your customers directly, maybe they need to know about web stores and web payments, obviously need to know about security and compliance to make sure they're not getting hacked and breached and leaking data of your customers. But they also need to know about the internal facing technology. So things like, how do you use productivity apps, just email, document writing, stuff like that. Do you use, how do you manage your laptops? If someone loses a laptop, what data is on that and how can you make sure it's not leaking and so forth? So this is what a CTO type of person, maybe full-time, maybe even fractional. But I'll tell you, once you get to about, it's 100 odd people, you're going to want someone who can make these decisions, who understands the landscape, who can protect your data and your customers, who can make that customer service really positive. So yeah, I would actually think at around that size, a CTO is going to do so much for you because they know they're the experts in technology. They can take the technology and show you what you can do to do better and focus on what you do really well and what your team does really well. And that's what a CTO would do for a mid-sized business. I've known a lot of CTOs and CIO as well, similar sort of concept. Typically a CTO is more externally facing, a CIO is more internally facing. But look, for a business like 100 people, it's going to be one or two people who are doing all of that. And a lot of it will be choosing the right external vendor to do it for you. So no, as a CTO, I don't put hands on keyboards and write code. I can, I have, I don't anymore. A lot of what I look for is how can I find the right cloud provider? So you don't actually even have to do anything. You offload that work to someone that's their core competency. Yeah, I would not sit down and program applications for you. I could get some contractors to build a small application, do something, upgrades to your mobile app, stuff like that. I could even hire a whole team of engineers if that's what we needed as a business. But I'll tell you, my first thought, especially these days, is to look to cloud computing providers and other vendors. And I'm much in a similar position. I'm running my own small business. Most of my services are cloud services. Because you know what? I want to focus on my business and my core competence.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what we've experienced. And I think that everybody's experiences is that technology is almost like a utility these days, like, power and light and stuff like that. And you have to have somebody who's just able to handle that. And, you're kind of like hands off. But I think that especially these days with all the interesting headlines coming out, like artificial intelligence is going to change, the future of work, or, this is coming down the pipeline, that's coming down the pipeline. Sometimes I worry that those kind of things are just added expenses, right? It's just okay. So now I'm paying for the cable internet. Now I'm paying for the power. Now I'm paying for water, and now I have to pay for AI. Because it's this new thing. I wonder how you see the presence of some of these emerging technologies. Is this going to be something that's going to be more like a utility, or is it where we're accessing it through vendors, or is it going to be something that is a little bit more ubiquitous?
That's a great question. Look, AI, I like to think of it as augmented intelligence at this point. I know enough about AI and programming and meta language and stuff. Most AI is a series of complex if then else statements right now. It's not really artificial intelligence. It's not, although we're starting to get to a point where we can pass Turing tests, right? We can't distinguish the AI from human. So we're definitely getting there. And yeah, Doctor, it will change everything. It'll change the whole landscape of business, from small business to large business. We're already seeing significant impacts, which might be a bit precipitous, of some of these large technology vendors, the Silicon Valley darlings, laying people off because they're going to get AI to do that work. This is going to affect a lot of people. But I am actually very optimistic about it, that it's going to augment human intelligence a lot more than replace it, at least in the midterm. This could be a revolution as significant as the internet itself. We totally change the way we do business, the way we do commerce, the way we communicate with friends and family. And I think AI has the opportunity to do that. There's also a lot of other technologies coming down, things like quantum computing, that just changes the world of how fast we can process and how much data we can work through. There's a lot of technologies coming down the pike which will change the way we live and breathe. But I'm pretty optimistic that they also help people do more intelligent and useful things. We're going to have to work through some economic changes, as we replace humans, and this will happen, replacing humans with artificial or augmented intelligence, at least to some degree. Then we're going to have to find out, how do we live as a society when the future of work is, I've only got a couple of hours a day because mostly I'm doing AI. But just like with the internet and going back, industrial revolution, motor cars, all sorts of things, we see hundreds of new types of jobs and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of actual new jobs being created because of these radical revolutions in technology. So we're going to have to rethink what we believe in the world, what we believe of work, how we do work, what work we as humans do, as opposed to what the systems and computers will do. I think it's going to be radical change over the next, it's going to be Amara's law, right? Amara's law is that you overestimate the impact of technology in the short term, but you underestimate the impact of technology in the long term. I think that's where we are right now. We think AI is everything, it's changing everything, we're laying people off because of it, but we're not really there yet. We will be, at which point, to your point, it'll be very democratized. Yeah, I think it's still specialty enough that you'll get it from external vendors, but it's going to be a little bit like your smartphone. You just download an app for a use case, and the use case might be, chatting with a lawyer because you want to use the right language for that. Or it might be creating a new brochure for your business, and it'll do it soup to nuts. You'll use an app for that, or a service, because you don't want to do it yourself as much, but it'll be in your hands. It'll be in your control. I do believe that.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that the idea of control is something that scares most people. And a similar technology, or a similar technological breakthrough, is 3D printing in my field, right? And so in the surgical field, 3D printing is really just making inroads now, but it's in the hands of a very select few. And so that, I think, it scares a lot of people in healthcare, because it just becomes this other thing that separates, these big corporations from a smaller organization, right? And in theory, it's just about control, right? Like, I want to have the control where I have my own 3D printing service, and something along those lines that can allow me to make what I need to make, rather than having to go to somebody else and basically ask for it or pay for it. And I hope that ends up the way that you're talking about, which is that we all have a little piece of it, so that it can be much more democratized, as opposed to, just giving more credence to the larger organizations becoming more wealthy, right? So I hope that that's the way that it happens. It's certainly something that I'm seeing just like the beginning stages now. I've honestly haven't seen a revolution like this other than the internet. And the internet, when it first came out, was just so democratized, right? I mean, so many people had the ability to do really well, and I really hope it's going to be like that. And I really do think it's going to be like that. But in general, these technological revolutions, it could go either way, right? And I tend to be on the optimistic side. I did want to talk with you just a little bit about artificial intelligence, just because I know that's something that everybody's talking about these days, right? And the idea of artificial general intelligence is leading to like downstream ideas and opinions about how much we're going to work. Are we going to have like a 3-day work week, just like you said, that can focus on creativity and stuff like that? Do you think that's going to happen? How do you feel about how all these things are going to shape out?
Yeah, look, I am pretty optimistic about it. I mean, look, I'll tell you just a little fun way of looking at it. You look at your Netflix queue and you look at all the things that Netflix is recommending to you, and it's like, is the algorithm really that good? So at this point, I think we're still in the early days where the algorithm really isn't that good.
I don't know, man. I think it's too good. I'm like 3 hours later, I'm like, oh man, I really should stop.
Oh, look, it certainly happens like on a Facebook or a YouTube or something where you get video after video. And there's challenges there. It sort of gets you down rat holes sometimes. Right. I love to go down a Wikipedia rat hole if we know.
Oh my God,
that's just reading.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do suggest to you things that it's like, that can be scary. I do think sometimes they're listening a little bit too much on my apps, because they do suggest things that I think I'm just talking about. I don't think I put that into a search.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's so interesting. Like they're so perceptive, honestly. And I'm happy about that, because honestly, like I'm gaining value from it. Like I enjoy watching Netflix. I enjoy reading about different things. That I think is a good thing. I think that it is pretty perceptive. But anyway, sorry, just keep going.
Yeah. No, I that's part of me that thinks it's not going to be so impactful, right? But we all know these things take off exponentially. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about generative AI, general purpose AI. That's pretty spectacular what some of the things that do. I'll tell you, I'm using it right now. I do a lot of writing. A lot of the way I write is I take bullet point notes, right? It's still my words, it's still my interest, it's still my thoughts. But you know what? It's going to take me an hour or two to put that into prose. Mm-hmm. And then I can start sort of editing it for a blog article or for a brief or a research report for a client or something. Mm-hmm. So what I'll do is I'll put my bullet notes into ChatGPT and just make this prose. Right. Simple stuff like that, right? So that's already here and it's pretty effective. Mm-hmm. But longer run, one of the things I do when I'm looking to innovation, I'm looking to drive innovation. I run innovation programs for my clients, and I have in the past, is using historical sensing to understand trends and patterns. And when I look at these revolutionary technologies, you're absolutely right. You pinned it. The internet was very democratized. Remember when every web page was just a personal homepage, right? Mm-hmm. That was great. Some of it was great. Everyone was on the internet. It was sort of early adopters at that point. But we kept going. Now we've got really good access. There's also problems about the capitalization and the commercial, there's a word for it, which I'm not going to repeat, to make it less good of the internet in general because of commercial interests. We've got to watch out for that, I think, with AI as well. Mm-hmm. Where is the break point on AI between truth and fiction? What is the goodness for humans versus the goodness for corporations of AI? I saw just recently at a conference, so I do a lot of conferences and speaking engagements and stuff, and there was one conference where their call for papers and the speakers, they made up people with presentations that didn't exist just to meet their DEI quotas. Mm-hmm. That's not good for humans. That's just good for corporations. Mm-hmm. And for 2 years, no one could tell the difference. Mm-hmm. And so that's problematic. But when I look at these patterns, when I look at the mind map of past revolutions, it's the elites that get access first. And in technology, that means people like me. I'm not that elite, but I know about tech and I can adopt it quickly. I can be that early adopter. Mm-hmm. And then it gets scale. So the price comes down and then it splits into specific use cases. And that becomes even more specific. And it becomes even cheaper and it becomes easy to use because we've moved from the marketplace of everyone to the marketplace of maybe just you working in your practice. So the specialization of that AI becomes more important. You don't end up using general purpose AI. You end up using specific stuff, like your 3D printer, for example. I've got a 3D printed crown. It's your specific technology. That's not general purpose 3D printing, right? I've got a 3D printer out here. I can print spare parts for if something falls off my shed, or, if I want to have a coaster that looks a certain way, I can print that myself. That's general purpose. You're using better technology, which is probably very expensive, but over time will come down as more and more people get to use it. This is the pattern, right? Well, everything from, even fibers in the Industrial Revolution, and now we can just spin at home and make our own stuff. 3D printing, internet technologies. I believe that's the pattern with AI. It'll go to a very general purpose. It'll come down in price. We'll start splitting it up into specific use cases, and it'll be so super useful and easy to use that it will just become part of the substrate of our life. That's what I hope. That's what I think should happen. The future is so opaque, though.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I really look forward to the specific use case scenario that you're talking about, because, it would be great if I could have a small team of people that tailors this technology, whether it's AI versus 3D printing versus whatever, to suit my needs. And I think that would end up being a better product for the end consumer, because right now we're making a square peg fit a round hole. We're just like trying our best with the technology that exists. But if I can have like a team that's able to do that and kind of tailor it a little bit, I think that would be something that would be really beneficial, not only to myself, but also to the patients that I take care of if I'm not in healthcare, like the consumers that are coming to my business. So I look forward to that. And especially AI being able to do that, where I can tell AI, hey, listen, like I have this computer program. I want you to tailor it in such a way that, the 3D printing is this versus that. Or, when someone picks up the phone and it's like an AI assistant, they say this instead of that, as opposed to having to go through some sort of go-between with a large organization that might have a lot of bureaucracy and it might be very expensive. I really look forward to that scenario. And I think that honestly, the internet is that scenario right now. I think that you can get a designer to help you build a beautiful website that's very professional looking, that's able to do a million different things and can really boost your business. And I think that that's the way that I look at technology in the optimistic sense. So I'm glad to hear that, somebody who's in it is seeing that same outcome. And I think that we're both hopeful for the same thing.
I mean, just think about laptops or personal computers, right? What was it back in 1960 odd? I think it was the head of IBM, if I'm not mistaken, said there's a market for around 6 personal computers in the world, right? I mean, this is someone who should know the opportunity in front of them and just totally didn't. It's really hard to think about these things in the future, but the arc of history has been towards democratization of technology. Look at phones. You used to have just a simple use case, call waiting, right? I mean, that was something only businesses had because they had switchboard operators and people pulling plugs and stuff. And now it's just on my cell phone. No big deal, right?
Right, yeah.
Digital cameras, right? Digital cameras were very elite. They were specialists. It was only for super pros. And then they started to come out in a different way. And now, again, same device that's in my pocket right now, it's a digital camera. I do believe this arc is towards democratization. And it's logical too, because it comes out of capitalism and about making more money for the companies who are doing it, want to build at scale. It's almost Keynesian economics at this point, that if you build at scale, then you will bring prices down. You will get to market saturation, at which point you will need to find adjacent or different markets, at which point you will specialize. So it's logical in terms of our capitalist economy, but it's also the pattern of history.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit just about how you think that work is going to change in the future. We kind of hinted at just the amount of work that human beings are going to do. I know Jamie Dimon says that we're going to eventually transition to like a 3-day work week. How do you think about that? Do you think that that's going to happen?
I do, actually. I think it's almost inevitable. I mean, and again, history molds its own arc quite a lot. So I'll tell you, I'm not excited that right now we're looking at AI to replace creativity. So Gen AI uses languages to create new words and phrases, or it uses existing art to create new art. It's all about this existing body of knowledge. And so at the moment, we're seeing a lot of AI creating new art. I think the real opportunity for humanity is for the AI to create work, to do work. So freeing up people for art. There's theories that if you let people do whatever they want to do, some of them will work, but a lot of them will create art. So I do think that's an interesting idea. Art is an imaginative thing. It's an innovative thing. Out of art comes good technology innovation too. I run my brainstorming sessions as sort of free-form artistic exercises to get everyone to participate and put their ideas out. Brainstorming, no bad ideas, right? And so I think freeing up people will become necessary. I actually think a UBI, a universal basic income, is probably inevitable. I don't know how it happens. As I said before, we really need to fundamentally rethink how we look at work and life and society. But I do think a UBI or a 3-day work week, 4-day work week at least is almost inevitable, because the computers will take away so much of the mundane work. And again, it won't be evenly distributed, right? The computer cannot dig a ditch. The computer cannot do all sorts of medical procedures that you can. It's about freeing up humans to do what they're uniquely able to do. I think over time, we will see a 4-day week. And there's already studies about this, right? There's already studies about productivity. Most people are only productive any given day for like 3 to 5 hours anyway.
Yeah.
It's about human attention spans and so forth.
Yeah.
So we'll free up humans. We'll make sure. Jamie Dimon says some interesting things like, we're a technology company with a banking license, right? I think that was Jamie Dimon too. I think he's got some interesting ideas. He keeps trying to push people back into offices. I'm not a huge fan of that, but he does have other good ideas about what business looks like in future. And yeah, I buy into that.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you're right. I think that especially in healthcare, there's this idea of looking at human beings as we got to squeeze every last little bit of productivity out of them.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that coming from the business sector, there's a lot of view of productivity that's not based on time, that it's based on things that are achieved.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's going to be translated to everybody, just like you're saying. I think that especially, one of the things is like culture also, right? I mean, are we going to be able to keep pace with some of these other countries that have just ridiculous work ethics, that are working round the clock and stuff like that? That idea of competitiveness, I wonder if that's going to have any sort of inkling on how this all shapes out. You've worked internationally. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, look, that's definitely going to be an issue that we need to address as a global society. I am very global. I've worked all over the world, and I already see some of this work being outsourced to India, to Malaysia, to other areas of low-cost, high-work areas. It's definitely going to be a challenge, but we've seen this for the last 30, 40, 50 years. We're still not dealing with all the fundamental changes that that's imposing on us. But certainly in manufacturing, we've already gone to that route, right? Where certainly in the US, there's been a decline in manufacturing and good manufacturing jobs. But now we're outsourcing to variously to China, to India, to other regions for auto parts, Mexico as well, obviously, for things like auto parts. We're doing it in electronics as well. It's about specialization of labor. And again, it takes me back to my studies of economics and where are we better? And, America's better as a knowledge industry, I think, just generally. There's all sorts of things where you're going to have to service individual customers in person right there, especially for this high knowledge, high value services like you provide, right? I know you can't do that by telehealth. It's hard to give someone a filling by telehealth. I'm sure you do a lot more than that. And it's definitely not going to be distributed evenly. You can't build a house remotely, although there's robots that are starting to build houses with 3D printing. So, these things will happen. They will change. We will see a movement of traditional jobs and labor to different areas. And yeah, the competition is going to be a challenge. I do think that we're going to need global politicians to come together in some way. So maybe there is no hope. But no, I do believe that as a society, we're looking to better ourselves across the board. America, or the US specifically, is very much a knowledge economy today. We create, we invent, we innovate. We might outsource the manufacturing, the physical instantiation of some of this. But Silicon Valley's brought a lot of that back to America. And so a lot of the commercial reality of our creativity and innovation is actually happening in computer systems now, which are global already. And you can't really outsource those. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for knowledge, insight, creativity, innovation coming out of every country, including the US.
I hope so. I always feel like it's based on wealth distribution. I always feel like we have the luxury of being a knowledge-based economy because we can, spend the money to have other people do it for us. And I hope that all of those other societies do become more knowledge-based. I think that, just from a humanity perspective, like I don't want them to work that hard. I see some of the stories that are coming out of some of these countries, and I just feel terrible that these people are working so hard that, like, their lives are so difficult. So I hope that eventually that changes, which is why I'm so bullish on humanoid robots. Like I can't wait until that's something that's ubiquitous and able to accomplish some of these more mundane tasks for us. But on the same token, I do hope that this kind of stratification of tasks gets a little bit better. I think that that's something that it's not really at the place where I want it to be right now, because I outsource, or offshore stuff for my business right now, and it's just stuff that I don't want to do. It's something that I'm gonna pay someone a much cheaper wage than I'm paying myself to do something that I don't want to do. And for some reason that doesn't sit right with me. I just want to make sure that there's some sort of equality of tasks there. And
I agree, Doctor. I think about this a lot, about this democratization of data, of technology, but I think we have to lift up all society. I really do believe that. I think technology is a good way to do that and help that. And by the way, and I know this to be true in my own world, when I'm outsourcing computer programming, that's a very common activity in large businesses to hire a group of 50 or 100 people in Bangalore or Beijing or somewhere to actually South America now as well, by the way, Latin America, really good outsourcing there. I'm discovering historically areas like Ukraine as well. I used to have a dev lab based in Kyiv. The interesting thing there is you are actually helping them in their lives when you do that, because that's a better job than they're getting locally. You're probably going to pay them a little bit better than locally as well, because of exactly what you're saying. You feel like I should be doing more for these people to help them up. Yeah, I can save a lot of money, but I can still pay them a little bit more than they might otherwise get and make their life better. I actually see that as an opportunity to help actually lift up other people. There's a lot of concern about globalism taking jobs away and so forth. I also look at that as giving people work and helping people uplift their situation, support their mum in the countryside where they couldn't otherwise. Little things like that. Working from home's been revolutionary for people who couldn't otherwise go to an office, right? I've got a disability, or maybe I've got children or a sick mum. I need to be at home, take care of them. But now I can do this work. Maybe I can do it 3 days a week and take care of my mum or my sick kid the other 2 days a week. I like to be optimistic about this, but I don't disagree with your point that there's significant exploitation going on as well. I will say, from my own personal experience, I try and do exactly the opposite. I try and make sure that when I'm working with people in lower income countries, in lower socioeconomic statuses, that I can help them uplift a little bit. And I think that's a great opportunity for us as a society.
Yeah, no, I really like that outlook, and I really appreciate that optimism. I think that, that's something that it frames the whole situation in a much more beneficial light. Can you tell me more a little bit about work from home? Because I feel like that's something, until you said it, I was not very bullish on. I felt like it was a luxury for white collar jobs, and honestly, not even a luxury for all white collar jobs, because I can't work from home. I have to go into the operating room to do my surgeries. I can't do that in really any location. So how do you feel about that? Because I feel like that is something that I know before we started the podcast, you were saying that you were a very big proponent of. Tell me your thoughts on work from home.
Yeah, look, I live in Colorado, right? So there's a lot of rural communities here, and I go out into the world. I ride my bike around and see these small towns, probably 100 people. And it's like, where's the future for them? What's the opportunity for them? So they're looking at getting in a car and driving to Denver every day, back and forth. They're taking up an hour of their time to do that. Then they sit at a desk and they have maybe a couple of phone calls. They tap away on the computer, they do their work. They might hang out with someone in the coffee room for a while. That's good. Social interaction matters. We are still humans. But then they might have a meeting with someone in another office. So they get on their computer and they do it via Zoom. And then they get in their car and they drive home. There's a lot of waste in that system. I look at some of the productivity metrics and systems that we use. I look at a lot of things like the Toyota way. I look at my own world in computing with DevOps. It's a whole new way of working together to produce better outcomes. So collaboration is really important, but also that productivity. And I really do believe in the human aspect as well, that work-life balance. And so I've actually worked remotely myself for about 25 years. I was an individual contributor. I was a small team lead, a group manager, a vice president, a C-level executive, and now an independent consultant. And I've done all of that working remotely and mostly working from home, even in different countries. I've gone traveling while working. So I did a trip to Seville a couple of years ago. I spent the evenings having fun, but I spent the days doing work, just rented a WeWork style temporary place. So you're right. I'm super privileged that I get to do that. I'm a white, middle class, well-off male in a technology knowledge area. Oh, wow. Do I just tick all the boxes for privilege? Of course I do. But a lot of my people didn't. And this is a really interesting thing. I do believe in the productivity of work from home and remote work. I also believe collaboration and innovation are contact sports. And so when I was running my own team, my last role, I was the CTO of a public company. And part of the mandate there was to send everyone home and terminate all our leases. And as a CTO, that was a lot to do with me, enabling my team with technology to meet. So collaboration tools, video tools, also processes and procedures, like how do I contact you? How do I expect you to be working? If I call you, can I expect you to answer that phone? Because if you're working in the office, I'm walking up to your desk and I'm just talking to you. So replacing some of this, but getting rid of that 2 hours of climate changing commute, that wasted time. You talk to people about commuting. It's like, that is 2 hours every day I never get back. And it makes people angry. It literally kills people. Absolutely. Traffic accidents. So I know I can measure my people. You talk about numeric activity, by the way, versus measuring results. That's a big part of it. I see a lot of my peers measuring activity metrics, things like number of lines in program code. If you've got really efficient programming, then you don't need lots of lines. That's not a good metric. Measure the outcomes, get people into offices to collaborate every now and then. We would have quarterly offsites with my leadership team. And then we would have each group have quarterly offsites. They always came together and talked. And they did things that were important to do in person. So brainstorming sessions, whiteboarding sessions. We didn't sit down and do Zoom videos. It was laptops closed so that we would interact with each other. We'd go out and have dinner. We'd get to know each other as humans and as people, which is really important. What a lot of people are missing with this work from home and remote culture is that you've got to still work with people. You've still got to collaborate and know who people are. All business is personal, just like all politics are local. Ultimately, you need to know the humans you're working with, and you will get better outcomes and better results. But I also think that remote work is super good for equality and equity. So I talked about, certainly working mums, for example, being able to do away with the cost of healthcare, because let's face it, if they're going to be productive for 5 hours a day, let them be productive in their time while they're taking care of their life as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Taking care of sick people with their own disabilities. Maybe I can't drive to work because maybe I'm blind, but I can do call center work at home. I actually think that work from home thing, I know for a fact through my own metrics, and my metrics are things like release to production of new production systems, new revenue from those new systems delivered to my business because customers are buying what we're selling. I actually was metriced on some really commercially economic things like EBITDA, right? Am I keeping my costs down by reducing my spend on real estate? And so I'm able to meet my EBITDA goals. So from a business perspective, I really do believe work from home works. Yes, it is for the privileged in so many different ways. I can't dig a ditch from home. I can't even look at someone's teeth from home. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can. Maybe there's technology there. But ultimately, you have to go and work with someone's face. And lots of people have to go and work with people face to face. Retail, there's no work from home for the lowest paid workers in our society. I definitely agree that's a problem. But if we can free up climate changing gases, cars that are killing us, if we can get more people into work so that they can then spend in their local community, not necessarily the downtown areas, then I think that brings everyone up again. So yeah, I am actually very bullish on it. I think it's very positive, but a lot of people don't get the full benefit, and some people will get no benefit. It's true.
Yeah, no, I think that I was coming into this conversation with an opinion, but you've definitely at least made me reevaluate my opinion. A lot of the things that you've said, I hadn't really thought about. So I hope that all of the things that you're saying come to fruition. I do know that even just from my own personal experience, my wife works from home, and it provides a lot of real benefit to taking care of our daughter and making sure that, just all of the admin stuff of running a household is taken care of. We have to separate that when you go to the office, right? Like when you're at the office, you're doing the office stuff. And when you're at home, it's a little bit more of a blended mix of things that you can do, right? So yeah, that's very, very interesting. We are getting close to the end of our time, Andy. So I want to end with the 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. Obviously, you can see from my background that science fiction is a huge influence on me and my life. I like a lot of the utopian views of science fiction. That's where I gain a lot of my inspiration from the future. Where do you gain your inspiration from the future?
Yeah, I think I do actually get my inspiration for the future from some science fiction. I like the old school stuff, the Asimov. Asimov just invented all this stuff in his mind that didn't come true for 20, 30, 50 years, but it worked when it did. So I do look to older science fiction for these ideas and so forth. I look to people like you. I absolutely do. I look to futurists and other people, like thinkers. Right? I love to, and much like you, I just don't necessarily agree with everything, but anything that makes me think differently is going to be a positive thing for my ideation. I look to people in my world at every level, right? It's one of the things that I learned writing this book. The head of technology for a large bank in Australia, he always used to meet with interns once a month because in his words, he said, they don't know what they're not allowed to do. So talking with young people, I love to talk. I've got nieces, nephews, godchildren. I love to talk to them because their imagination is sparky, right? And some of it's outrageous. But hey, Asimov was pretty outrageous for a while there too. So listening to people who don't know what they're not allowed to do are really interesting. New employees in my world, bring a new employee and show them an application and go, what would you change? Just listening to people at all levels. I do believe, and I've written about this, that executives are not necessarily the greatest font of innovation because we've been around for a long time following a lot of rules. We're a bit stuck in the mud. But when these young people come into my world, I'm always interested to learn about them. So yeah, I think not one source. Futurist podcast technologists, there's a lot of those people in my world who I respect greatly. Even just other CTOs like myself, I'm in a couple of societies where I get to just share blue sky thinking with other CTOs about what could technology be for our business in 5 years? What could it be for us in 20 years? And we have these sorts of brainstorm sessions. But if it was down to just one sort of group or source, I would say young people, especially really young people, because they don't have the preconceived notions. They're thrown straight into a modern world without learning the history of it necessarily in their early years at least. So they don't have these constraints that we all do and these preconceived notions. So I think just talking with young people and getting their ideas and asking them questions about their life and what they want to do next year or in 10 years, because man, for a 7-year-old, 10 years may as well be 100. And so you do talk about flying cars and all this sort of other stuff in your background, space missions and stuff. Young people get me so energized about the future because, I think they'll make it a different world that we can't predict, and it's going to be pretty awesome.
No, I agree. I look at the things that like my daughter's into and just the way that she thinks about the world, and it's really interesting to see how a brain works with no limits, right? With no preconceived notions, no biases, and just the pure raw aspect of imagination. And I really echo Asimov being such an influence on me because, again, I not only was he able to come up with this stuff, but also he was able to look at the the things that might be a problem and have solutions for them, right? Like the three laws of robotics. I think that he thought like, okay, humanoid robots are going to be an eventuality. How do we make this be something that benefits humanity? How do we make something that this is something that we can coexist with? And I really, again, I'm so bullish on humanoid robots. Actually, the next guest after you is going to be a guy who's here in Massachusetts, who's designing a lot of robots for the agricultural aspect. And so I really look forward to talking with him. But that's a really cool thing to know about you. I really appreciate your insight into that. My second question is, of all the technologies that you come across on a regular basis, what is the one that most excites you? I mean, we've talked about 3D printing, AI, all these different things that are coming down the pipeline. But like, what is something that you see an article about and you're like, oh, I got to read this?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. There's so much. Yeah. I read all the AI articles because I'm still trying to figure out, are we there yet? What do we have to do to get there? But it doesn't excite me. It interests me greatly. I'll tell you what excites me is this video. Man, the last company I worked for was a video company, did enterprise video. And some of the things that I got, I'm not a video expert, by the way. I went into that company as a systems programming expert to help their systems get better. Even though it was a technology I wasn't fully capable of, I had great people. I do believe in leaning on great people all the time. And I went into that company not really understanding the depths of what video was going to be capable of. You know, we've gone in leaps and bounds over the last few years. I've been, like I said, work from home, work remote for 20, 25 years. Historically, not even on video because I didn't have that capability. 25 years ago, webcams weren't a thing. Couldn't do anything. I had to go into an office to use telepresence, right? Now, we got video, we've got automatic translations, we've got these video backgrounds, real background, by the way. We've got automatic background. So now people working from home don't have to show off their kitchen or their living room or something like that, right? It gives people privacy and confidence. But apart from that, the automation that can happen, oh my goodness, automatic transcription. We've seen that, on YouTube and stuff, automatic translation. We're starting to see real-time translation. So I could have this conversation with someone who I can't actually talk to. Wow. Oh, I'm a global traveler. That would be so amazing. A little Babel fish in my ear. Yes, please.
Absolutely.
The 3D stuff, the telepresence stuff, being in the room with you. You're in the East Coast. I'm in Colorado. We can be in the same room together. By the way, I've done some of this with the HoloLens, the Microsoft version, working with remote teams doing problem diagnosis on computer system problems. We're literally all in the same room. We're drawing on the same physical whiteboard.
Wow.
But it's all being captured by video and transmitted to us in these glasses. I feel like I'm in that room with them. This sort of thing is going to be incredible and does get me excited for everything. I'm a gamer, so everything from gaming and 3D interactive immersion gaming to collaboration with my team without actually having to have an offsite. So again, I'm bullish on remote because video is almost there. I'm really excited what we're going to do with video for humans, for work, for play, for connection, for collaboration.
So normally I ask 3 questions, but when you brought up gamer, I got to ask a 4th question. So I'll save the last one, but I do want to have a follow-up question. What are you playing right now? What is your game of choice?
Right now I'm on Zelda, the second one, Tears of the Kingdom. I'm only about 120 hours in, so I've got a fair way to go.
Yeah, I know. I finished the main storyline, and I'm just kind of like enjoying myself. It's such a great game.
What a beautiful world.
Waste a few hours in, and get back to the real life. But okay, so last question: 10 years from now, where do you see your role as a CTO? It's going to be obviously very different with all the technologies that we talked about. What do you think the future is going to look like in 10 years?
Yeah, look, it's something I wrote about in this book is the I in CIO stands for a lot of things, right? It stands for interpersonal. How do you get people to connect over technology? It definitely stands for information. How do you make sure people have the right information to make the right decisions at the right time? I think it also stands for innovation. I think my role as a CTO, a CIO, in the future will be all about guiding innovation for people who don't have time to understand the technologies. 50 years ago, technology wasn't so hard. Most people could understand most things, engines and physical stuff. Now it's all hidden and difficult. We're getting to use it, but we still don't understand it. I think a CTO, a CIO in 10 years' time will be fundamentally about guiding and putting guardrails in so people can't fall off the road. Today, it's a lot of roadblocks, stopping people doing things so they can't go forward. I think the future role of a CTO or CIO is very much about that innovation guidance, putting the barriers on the side of the road so you can't fly off the freeway, making sure your car has appropriate brakes so you can slow down when you need to, so you can't put too much risk into a process, but not stopping people from doing innovation, encouraging them, helping them, giving them the right tools at the right time, the right technology at the right time to be able to connect, collaborate, innovate. It's a strategic role more than a hands-on role. As I said, I've already walked back from putting hands on keyboards and writing code. I guide other people on what code to write. Over time, AI is going to write a lot of the code. So again, my role becomes much more of a guidance one, setting boundaries, setting goals and boundaries, and making sure that I'm removing roadblocks to make that happen. I fundamentally believe that's the role of technology leaders going forward. So it frees up the other leaders to focus on their areas, on marketing, on sales, on operations, on production, and making that a cohesive unit. That's what I think my role will be in the future.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think it's very technical right now, but over the next however many years, it's just going to become more and more broad and more far-reaching, which I look forward to. I think that the leveraging of technology is going to make a better consumer experience. So thank you so much for speaking with us today. I think we got a lot of great insight. I think you have a lot of really optimistic visions about the future. I really appreciate the fact that some of these things that I was kind of pessimistic about, you've really changed my mind on. And so that's the whole goal of this podcast, is to get people excited about the future and really look at it with a positive light. So thank you very much, Andi. And thank you to all of our listeners. Please like and subscribe on the bottom. And for the people who are joining us next week, we will see you in the future. Have a great day, everybody.
We appreciate you taking part in today's episode. Take this chance to reimagine a better future by joining a community of futurists who strive for a remarkable world. Be a part of this growing network and contribute to making the world a more positive place. Visit thefuturistsociety.net and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a drop of hopeful futurism.